Welcome to Roundup. What is collective intelligence and why does it matter to a digital global age and the imminent space age? For most of human history, collective intelligence was confined to a small groups locally. In a digital global age, because of the advances in information, communication, digitization technologies, internet, and more, we are now capable of having collective intelligence on a global scale across all boundaries in cyberspace, geospace, and space. To accommodate this shift in scale and the growing demand for transparency, collaboration, and cooperation, there is a beginning of a global effort to build truly collaborative systems at all levels, local, national, and global. In the coming years, the emerging collaborative collective intelligence systems will likely have a potential to dominate all processes across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia, in short referred to as NGIOA. To discuss collective intelligence further, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Norman Johnson to this Roundup. Dr. Johnson is the Chief Scientist of Referentia Systems and is based in the United States. Welcome, Dr. Johnson. We are honored to have you on this Roundup.
Great. Thank you very much. This is exciting.
Wonderful. So before we start discussing the collective intelligence, it's important that we discuss the evolutionary journey towards the mutualistic NGIOA symbiosis, that means nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia. The digital global age has brought a beginning of an end to nations living in isolation and the beginning of nations living in an interconnected and interdependent global economy. This is a stepping stone to the coming tomorrow of a space age. Today, individuals and entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia stand on the brink of a technological tsunami in cyberspace, geospace, and space, in short referred to as CGS. This is fundamentally altering the way each component of a nation lives, works, and communicates to one another. In its scale, scope, and complexity, the technology revolution triggered transformation across CGS is unlike anything NGIOA or humankind has experienced before in any of its prior technological revolutions. The speed of the current ideas, innovations, technology, and breakthroughs has no historical precedent and is fundamentally disrupting almost every component of a nation. In addition, the breadth, depth, and impact of these changes heralds the transformation of entire interconnected and interdependent systems of socialization, education, innovation, production, management, governance, and so much more. While there is no way to calculate effectively just how this information, communication, and digitization technology revolution or evolution will unfold, one thing seems to be clear, that the silos are breaking across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia. What impact do you see because of the imminent breakdown in silos?
I think the challenge is that the kind of hyperconnectivity that we're experiencing is both a opportunity, and many of us see that in our personal lives, but it's also a kind of profound challenge too. I think all of us in our personal and governmental lives are seeing systems reach what I would call a complexity barrier, where the kind of traditional systems are no longer can actually solve the problems needed to address the issues that are arising in society. And I see that as the tension that we're in right now. We have new resources coming online. At the same time, that's creating a higher complexity that is challenging all our systems, whether it's in our personal lives all the way up to international governments, to solve those.
Yes, very true. It is getting very complex, and nations are made of government, industries, organizations, and academia. If we speak broadly of the components, and of course the individuals, and each of us, each of the entity has a separate role in the existence of a nation. But we all are invariably linked together, having a coexistence and mutualism, sort of symbiotic relationship. So application of evolutionary theory, if we apply the evolutionary theory to the nations or NGIOAs in a digital global age, it leads to fundamental questions about challenges, competition, struggle, and survival. And this increased NGIO competition of a digital global age is a source of worry to so many, as it has developed highly turbulent and highly fragile NGIOAs. Right now, if you see across nations, there is so much turbulence and there is so much fear because of that. But however, if we a broader understanding of technology revolution and evolution, considering not only interactions within and across NGIOA, but also cooperation within and across NGIOA would introduce some sort of balance into our understanding of fundamentally evolving very complex NGIOAs and this highly fearful and controversial time in a digital global age. Now, as NGIOAs are evolving on the back of technology transformation, where do you see the collective NGIOA evolutionary journey going?
See, this is, we're each conscious individuals. Our organizations also have a self-awareness, and we believe in our kind of hubris is that it will question of how much the society progressed through kind of self-aware individual group or national action versus kind of self-organizing emergent collective action. And I think in our hubris, we actually think that most of the time it's actually, some leader somewhere. Take a very good example is the fall of the Berlin Wall, which totally changed everything. Pretty much every intelligence source said that that was not predicted. It was a surprise. And if you go back and actually look at how that occurred, it was not a one leader. It was not a group that did it. It was actually collective self-organization. There was kind of a loophole in the East German laws that allowed small farmer collectives to meet, and they met in small groups, I think no larger than 10, but they had an extreme interchange between the groups. So it was kind of like a spreading of a signal through the entire population through these small groups. Very much like open spaces or World Cafe techniques allow for community consensus. And so, that was a major world event that changed the history of the planet. Yet it happened from kind of a bottom-up process. And I believe that's, in many ways, our only hope is because we're being totally challenged to rely on experts or leaders to solve problems.
Very true, and that is an excellent example that you give about the Berlin Wall. And there is a growing belief now that integrated NGIOAs, or collectively, they would be smarter than very few decision makers who are at the top taking decisions for everyone. So this is like not only individual nations but globally, it would foster innovation, and they would collectively be able to come to wise decisions. So collective intelligence and societal evolution gives us new insights for understanding how our social and economic activities should be organized in a digital global age. So irrespective of whether we are looking at cyberspace, geospace, and space, do you see a need for new systems, new methodologies, new framework tools and technologies that can remove the selfish behavior of individuals, entities, or any component of a nation?
Absolutely. That's kind of a leading question. The fact that we continue to have significant problems, and the problems are getting worse. The global warming, the total inability to address probably one of the most urgent issues, that will affect millions of people, maybe billions of people. Yet we have no kind of constructive mechanisms to deal with kind of conflict of nations, conflict of corporations to go forward. So absolutely, there's a definite need for newer methodologies and probably a symbiosis between human resources and technological resources to provide methodologies that just have not existed before. They will self-evolve out of necessity, or we can take research that's happened over the past 20 some years and actually say what are the features required in these resources in order to make them work.
Yes, absolutely. Now, let's talk about the technology transformation and potential for the collective systems. The advances in information communication, digitization technologies, and internet, and so many other technologies, especially the internet, if we talk about the connected computers and computer code, now allow most connected individuals from across nations to work together in so many new innovative ways. Blockchain technology allows nations the digital infrastructure on which the global systems can be built. Do you see that the time is now ripe for many more such systems to benefit from collective intelligence? And how should we structure collective intelligence systems so that collectively NGIOA can act more intelligently than any individual or entity?
Because we are so immersed in our technology, we probably actually don't really appreciate the change that's occurred. Certainly, we have faster access and various things, but let me just give one example of how fundamentally the information age has changed how we interact. Previously, maybe as a researcher, I used to go to my bookshelf and pull down a book, and I would open it up, find a reference. I would use that reference and write a paper, give conclusions. Now, when I do it using information systems, the entire world can benefit from my access to that information. And it knows my context, it knows what I went after, and that. Now multiply that by 1 billion people, and you all of a sudden begin to have an opportunity to collectively aggregate information in optimal ways that can help everybody.
Yes.
And certainly we see this with for the last 10 years, 15 years in Amazon's product referencing. But we're also seeing it in many, many, many areas now. But it's still a kind of an evolutionary process where maybe companies are trying different things, but they really, I think, don't really appreciate the systems they're creating yet from kind of a more broader perspective.
Yes, very true. And those are great examples. But for the benefit of our global viewers and listeners, let's briefly talk about what exactly is collective intelligence and what is the goal of collective intelligence. Why does it matter more than anything today in cyberspace and space to have space? So to have this collective intelligence, how would you define collective intelligence?
Okay. In many ways, collective intelligence has been around historically for a long, long time. In a democracy, it could be viewed as a collective intelligence, a jury system, on and on. So those have existed, and they rely very strongly on kind of traditional social processes. The collective intelligence that I'm most interested in, and the one that certainly in the last 20 years has caught many people's attention, is what you might call emergent collective intelligence. And it's where the global outcome, the collective outcome, actually can't be traced back to any individual performance. So some excellent examples are the neurons in your brain. I can't look at just a single neuron or any of their capabilities to capture and describe how the brain as a whole functions. The same is true for the stock market. The stock market as a whole, the S&P 500, is actually the metric by which investment managers are judged, and they may 1 year outperform, 2 years outperform, but very, very few individuals outperform the S&P 500 over 10 years. There's only been 3 individuals ever that have done that. And that should tell you that a lot of the ways which we say we need an expert to solve a problem is actually not a good resource in complex systems, because they may perform well once, but their performance isn't reproducible.
Very true. And those are great examples that you gave.
So I think the future of emergent collective intelligence, and when I say collective intelligence, I really mean emergent collective intelligence, is kind of a combination of these information processes with our information systems. So as I mentioned before, information systems know in detail what I do. There's a great depth. There's also a great breadth as well, because there's such a broad diversity. And there's an ability to retain all that information for long terms, which has good and bad sides. Maybe as things change, some information should be gotten rid of. That's why we forget things. So there are kind of technical challenges in that. So collective intelligence is really an expression of a higher function of a collective as compared to an individual. And then emergent collective intelligence is how that occurs in a emergent self-assembly, bottom-up process, like the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yes.
What started this field of emergent collective intelligence was independent research by myself and Professor Scott Page back in the late 90s. And we had some research results that were so kind of shocking, we actually could not get our research published. For example, I had one reviewer say, "I don't see what's wrong, but it can't be right." And I have that in quotes. Wow. And so what are some of these non-intuitive, unexpected results? One is that a diverse team of different individual performance levels, selected randomly, outperforms a team of best performers. So this is totally contrary to all our paradigm of solving hard problems. Let's hire the best. Let's get the team of the best performers together and solve it. Well, what these research studies shows is that best performers are actually very highly specialized. And in highly complex problems, you actually need kind of broader understanding. And poor performers tend to explore the space more. So that's why a group of poor performers are kind of essential to a global performance. A good example of that is in ant foraging. Finding the shortest path between the potato salad and their nest is an emergent process. No individual ant understands what an individual or what a optimal shortest path is. Yet as a collective, they find it. And what's interesting is that right before the shortest path is kind of condensed by all the ants and they're all following the same path, if you look at the paths of all the ants, there's a lot of randomness in each of the ants' contributions, but their aggregate is the shortest path. So there's no one ant that's actually taking the shortest path. So this says that natural selection, which says survival of the fittest, isn't a paradigm of performance for these type of emergent collective systems.
That is a really good example that you gave that. And while collective intelligence is primarily seen as an initiative in which there is willingness to share and an openness to the value of distributed intelligence for the common good of humanity, there are still, we need to understand what are the causes affecting the collective intelligence. Where do you see the collective intelligence evolving based on all these causal factors?
That's an excellent question, because most of these kind of academic studies that I did and Scott Page did assumed that all the individuals have some level of performance, they have perfect communication, they agree on all the options, they have the same goals, and there's no absence of bias. And none of these are true in our actual experience. So we have a gap between the guidance given by these kind of collective demonstrations and of intelligence and our real world situations. And where I think probably one of the largest gaps is in kind of conflicts that occur when you bring information together. And so it may be because we interpret information differently. It may be because we're biased and we view the problem from a different perspective. A lot of that is tied in with kind of cultural. So that's what makes kind of global coordination challenging, is that two cultures may view the same information from very different ways. One is acceptable, one is not acceptable. And so that kind of discussion identifies what future resources will need to be able to do. They will have to take information that is biased and be able to assemble it to a useful conclusion, some level of higher performance, and not be influenced by that bias. And an interesting research result that I had last year was that in looking at the previous kind of idealized collective systems, if I introduce kind of conflict between the individuals in that they view information differently, some see an option where another doesn't see an option. Collective intelligence still occurs if those kind of biases are uncorrelated. Yes. So the biases become a source of noise, and the collective intelligence is very tolerant to high levels of noise. It's part of the robustness.
Yes, very true. And we see the examples of bias, in pretty much all the systems that we have across nations currently. And so risk management is also one of those systems where you will see bias for who are you managing risk, whose risk are you managing, and who are you accountable to, and how risks are managed. It's all very biased system that we are looking at. So that is at the heart of our efforts at this moment, the risk group's efforts. So let's talk about the collective risk management system. Demand for transparency, collaboration, and cooperation is increasing in a digital global age. In the face of this reality, it is important to evaluate whether few decision makers across NGIOA can be trusted to make all the decisions about risk from cyberspace, geospace, and space, and all its interconnections. The promoted risk intelligence from the few versus collective risk intelligence is a choice we will have to make as a society in the coming years, in the coming days and years. Do you see collective risk intelligence playing an effective role in how we manage our risk? Because we feel that the current risk management system is highly ineffective because there are, independent risk and interdependent, interconnected risk, and we don't have a clear system or clear structure or framework by which we can make anyone accountable to whose risk we are managing and which risks are transferred, which risks are insured, which risks are managed. So we end up having bigger and bigger, very complex systemic risk, and then everyone across nations has to suffer because of that. So this is at the heart of our effort. Do you see the need for collective risk intelligence playing an effective role in how we manage our risk?
Absolutely. So maybe it's important to parse the problem into pieces. A lot of what you just spoke to was, given some type of risk process, how do you meet the needs of the kind of different conflicting stakeholders? And that absolutely is part of it. You can't be exclusive. It has the results of any risk management process has to be tailorable to the different stakeholders. The other part of the problem that has to be separated out is just the mechanics of how you do the risk process with these biased, maybe conflicted, certainly compartmentalized contributions. And I think that's the tailoring we can do. I think that's a tractable problem because it really just requires communication between what their goals are and what your methodology can do. The actual assembly of the risk management process of where you get the information, how you elicit it, how you process it and stuff is the real challenge. What's interesting in my personal career was, I spent 20-some years at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and in my last 10 years there, I was working in biothreat, which is a historically 200-year period from epidemics to now weaponized biothreats. And very complex, very compartmentalized, siloed. Just for the United States, it's a huge budget of NIH public health budget alone is in the 20 billions of dollars. The total kind of biothreat public health budget alone is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And everybody has their own stakeholder in it. So one of the projects I was involved with was to do a national biothreat risk assessment, and it was called for by a presidential directive. And what I didn't know at the time is what we came up with was fully aligned with my other kind of non-technical research interests of collective intelligence and how to solve grand challenge type problems. And it was only recently when I was talking to the NIH and giving a talk to their program officers that I realized, oh my gosh, we actually solved the grand challenge, collective intelligence challenge. So just to give you a quick idea, the original presidential directive of the national biothreat, it was very short term. We had 9 months to complete it. Nationally, there was probably over $20 million spent on that in a year period. And the presidential directive set kind of high goals. It had to be a transparent process. It had to capture uncertainty and strife. It had to identify gaps in the understanding. It had to guide prioritization of ongoing investments. It had to be able to be quickly updated. It had to be tailorable to different agencies. And it had to deal with the whole classified, unclassified world. And what became very, very clear, and we actually believed that it really couldn't be done at the level being required, was because we knew that when we would get these stakeholders in a room, that they would just start arguing with each other and defending their own turf. And in the work that we did prior to that, we used a fuzzy logic risk assessment method that essentially allowed every contributor, every subject matter expert in any minutia, to be able to give what they wanted to contribute, even if it included biases and things. But we always knew that there would be some kind of core little piece of knowledge in there. And then we did over 50,000 elicitations of these experts in small groups. If we had done it in a large group, it would have caused conflicts to occur because they'd start posturing. And the fuzzy logic allowed for people to give capture their uncertainty in it. And maybe they thought there were two answers. Well, they could say that in the logic. So in combination of a methodology that reduced conflict by letting everybody feel they contributed, even their biases, to doing full stakeholder engagement, doing small group elicitation, we were able to create a process that actually achieved those desirable features. And it was transparent because it's a technical process. You could actually look at it and you could do what if. What was interesting and maybe an additional feature is it also enabled the discovery of surprises or innovations. And this is something that's very challenging. This is Rumsfeld's "you don't know what you don't know." And so, for example, in biological threats that required respirators, the analysis very quickly identified that was the weakest link. Most hospitals only have a couple of respirators. In a large influenza pandemic or a bio threat that challenges the respiratory system, you would have 90% deaths because you wouldn't have enough respirators. And so that was a big aha. So that's a very good example of how technology with a methodology can do a highly conflicted risk assessment and get results that everybody buys into.
Yes, no, that is a great example. And we also have over the years faced the trust problem in the risk management process itself. There is a lack of transparency, lack of trust. But now, because of the blockchain technology, it solves the trust problem, and it enables NGIA components to transact with each other within entities or within, and across industries or nations, and it removes each component's need to trust the other. You don't need to personally, even if you don't like someone, you don't trust someone, it does not matter because the blockchain provides you that transparent, trackable system by which nobody can, manipulate the system. So risk group is we are right now on a mission to epitomize the collective intelligence as the synergistic intersection among independent risk and interconnected and interdependent NGIOA risk. We believe that this will help us achieve an effective process for better collective risk intelligence and management than silo and fragmented risk approach that we have across nations which does not manage risk effectively. However, knowing what defines and determines collective intelligence is perhaps the biggest question we face today. When we say we want to solve societal problems or NGIOA problems using collective intelligence, do we have what it takes in terms of determination? Because there are a lot of many complex problems all across nations that needs to be solved, but there is also a need for desire. There needs to be a desire and there needs to be a determination. We have the technology, we have the capability by which we can build all these systems, collective systems, irrespective of whether it's a global warming system or whether it's a risk management system or whether any other system. We have the capability, but there needs to be a desire and determination. Do you see that we have what it takes in terms of determination to be able to go on that journey?
Well, I think this is, where there's a technological complexity barrier. There's also a sociological complexity barrier. And I think a topic that we haven't touched upon that I worked for 2 years with an expert in conflict resolution. She was in Dr. Merle Lefkoff. She was in the Carter administration. She helped in Ireland between the Protestant and Catholics, in the Middle East, in Bosnia. And she spent 2 years at Los Alamos, and we worked together to try to develop a science for conflict resolution. And after about 6 months of discussion, what we figured out was that the kind of missing understanding is the kind of the dynamics of social identity. And what most people don't understand, and even a lot of social scientists, is that social group identity is actually a characteristic of social organisms. We think humans are different. No. This is true for, other primates. It's true for social insects. It's true all the way down to slime molds, this concept of social identity. And so what social identity, the way we define it functionally, is that if somebody does something to your social identity group, you feel like they did it to you. So let's say somebody attacked somebody in your family, you would feel like you were attacked. And that's true for companies, it's true for ethnicities. There are many, many examples of that. So we all have a sense of it. What isn't well understood and appreciated is that when social identity gets triggered, we go into an old cowboy phrase of circling up the wagons. We create us versus them. So a good example is when 9/11 happened in the US, we became hyper-patriotic, and the Muslim American community in the US became pushed out, ostracized, repressed, even abused, when we should have been doing just the opposite. We should have turned to them and asked them, what just happened? Tell us how to deal with this. And because of our patriotic circle the wagon attitude, we did absolutely the wrong thing. We became aggressive. We attacked the people that did it rather than trying to understand why it happened. And this is true in almost any type of polarized situation. And risk methodologies will fail in that. And largely due to this kind of innate social psychological process of when we get uncertain, when we get threatened, we put up barriers, and it's us versus them. The way I capture that is to say the messenger is more important than the message when you're triggered, when your social identity is triggered. And really, to make progress, we have to do just the opposite. We have to make the message more important than the messenger. So this is what future risk methodologies will have to do. And it comes out in two ways. One of the things that we realized is that when you bring polarized leaders together, you can't actually tell them the right answer. they have to be able to discover the right answer. They have to say, well, if I do this action, what will be the consequences? And if they can see that it actually leads to more violence, economic challenges and everything, then they may not do that. So it's very important to let kind of these polarized leaders discover the right answers rather than to be told the right answers. So that's one.
Absolutely.
The second,
yes, please.
Sure. The second observation is that when people are in uncertain and feeling threatened, they become triggered, and so that's not a state where they can actually contribute and move forward. So we need to find ways of making people feel relaxed, making them feel in a trust situation. And this is why we ended up using a small group elicitation in our methodology, is that in small groups, people didn't feel threatened. And so they could actually relax and not posture, not be polarized. Where if we had done it in a large group and we tried that, it was a nightmare because everybody was talking to their identity.
Yes. Yes, very true. And those are excellent examples you gave. And I think what you talked about 9/11 and how there was a backlash against the Muslim community, it's a perfect example. And I think media can play a big role here. Media plays a role in promotion of collective intelligence. Yes. Initiatives like Risk Roundup, what we are doing right now, they are directly trying to promote and enhance collective intelligence by collective participation of decision makers from across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia. We have participation from all across nations, all across industries, and that is the goal, that the ability of this digital media to easily create, store, retrieve, communicate, share information, predominantly in digital format through connected computers and internet, allows for it to be shared without difficulty. So these risk roundups that we are creating, it is so easy for us to share it across nations in all kinds of formats. So through interaction with new media like Risk Roundup, webcast, podcast that we are generating, and sharing the knowledge, information, and intelligence, it easily passes between individuals and entities across NGIO, resulting in a sort of form of collective intelligence. What we are doing is trying to create collective intelligence here. So the use of interactive new media like Risk Roundup promotes digital interaction, and this distribution of CGS security risk, that means cyberspace, geospace, and space security risk, knowledge between users across individuals and entities across NGIOA. So when we view collective intelligence through the lens of risk management, the internet enables collective risk intelligence at the CGS scale, cyberspace, geospace, and space, and it facilitates the emergence of a global CGS risk brain. What do you think of the making of a global risk brain if we are able to create this collective risk intelligence from across nations, from cyberspace, geospace, and space? We have the cumulative, risk identification capability, risk evaluation capability, risk management capability. We are in essence creating a global risk brain. What do you think of the making of a global risk, potential making of a global risk brain?
Well, you actually kind of answer your own question because you use the word brain.
Yes.
Imagine if your visual cortex were, off by itself and saying, well, we have a problem here. We need to involve more resources. And maybe your emotional part of your cortex and all these different parts of our brain have to somehow coordinate with each other. And through evolutionary processes, we have more or less achieved that, and it's fairly robust. So I think the answer is it will happen. We will have a global risk brain, but because we don't fully really understand the processes on how to make that work and be tailorable to the different needs, it will be an evolutionary process with dead ends and various things. One caution I would make is, and this goes back to my research the last couple of years, is that often we want to create methodologies that are objective. I mean, that's what science is all about, is we throw away information that's not useful, and we try to distill the essential information to get conclusions. And we do that in our risk methodologies as well. And in fact, all of science is based upon that. Well, a good example of the failure of that mentality is the intelligence community in any country, but particularly in the US. After a couple of notable failures in the past where there were biases in the system, they tried to come up with very objective systems from the very beginning, to collection of data, to assembly of data, to analysis, to conclusions. And what they found is that failed. The system was too complex for that objective process. And the big aha is that a lot of information needed to solve a grand challenge, hard problem, is embedded in often subjective information. And if we extract out what we think is objective, we lose the context of that objective information. And so what we need are methodologies that actually can deal with biased subjective information and be able to aggregate the little nuggets of useful information to actually get a final risk assessment that is an emergent from the many diverse contributions.
Yes, no, that's an excellent suggestion you made, and you're absolutely right that there are still a lot of questions that needs to be answered. How to create this kind of global structures that can effectively evaluate those kind of risks, because not everything is. You are right that we would like to create an absolutely objective system, but there are so many different variables that needs to be considered, and we are promoting open source triangular linkages of risk management, security, and global peace dialogue. And what it means is that we fundamentally depend upon the formation, participation, and growth of an active and vibrant global peace fan community that would both actively promote risk groups, risk philosophy and approach, and create all different kinds of content extensions and additions to the risk management, security, and peace initiative, because these are all interconnected. If we manage our risk effectively, we will achieve security, and security will lead us to peace. So but at this point, there are so many different variables that we need to consider. We need to answer so many different questions, and it's going to take some time before we are able to effectively figure out a vision, a broader, collective vision by which we can, go forward and manage risk effectively for everyone across nations. But let's talk about the shared organizations that we see across nations currently. At the rate technology is changing, no individual or entity across NGIOA can fully keep up in the innovations needed to compete. Instead, organizations like ours are drawing on the power of mass collaboration and inviting all these very distinguished decision makers from across nations into collective participation of using their knowledge, ideas, talent, and wisdom, so that we could create things collectively together. We could come up with the collective wisdom and collective intelligence. But we believe that the global NGIO collaboration will help us not only reduce cost for initiatives, but also reduce the time needed for completion of projects or initiatives, and that we see across so many different initiatives. Do you see new ideas being generated and explored by collaboration or cooperation of individuals and entities from across nations, outside the confines of entities or nations which are currently proving to be very valuable, and we are looking forward to seeing how they are, shape up the coming tomorrow. Like you are working on so many different initiatives in the collective intelligence, and so many others are working on it. Where do you see the applications of collective intelligence currently across NGIA?
Yeah, before I answer that, let me just touch on one point that you made, and that's how important it is to get participation and participation in an effective way. And I've kind of mentioned it on and off, but let me just give a story which identifies an opportunity and also has a major challenge in it. In one of our first meetings of the biorisk assessment, we brought together 20 some agencies, and each person, there were maybe 25 people in the room, and we were expecting a major conflict to occur. We outlined what we were going to do, and basically how everybody could contribute what they wanted and thought that represented their work, and it would be transparent. They could see how it affects the outcome. And after a few minutes of silence, half the people in the room were raising their hand and say, "Put my name down to help you." And these were mid-level managers, and it totally was shocking that they were volunteering to help this process. It was completely unexpected. And I believe that the reason is that, and they said as much, is that I've lived in smoky rooms my whole life. Decisions are made not based upon any type of risk management. They're made on budgets and power and various things. I welcome a process that actually is transparent, defensible, and whatever. So that's the good news, is that if you can offer these kind of siloed groups, including nations, an opportunity to contribute in a fair process, they may step up. Now, what's interesting is down the road, their bosses, which were the top agency executives, hated the process because they're the ones that became the problem and made it challenging. So this is what we run into nationally, is we need to find methodologies, approaches, interactions that occur not at the top, because the top, they posture too much, but to enable the people that are kind of in the trenches, and they actually want to see a positive global success, and how to enable them. And I think what I've seen is that our European colleagues are well ahead of everybody else in achieving this, in government, in business, in kind of all levels. The more power a system has, the less likely it is to change. And I think that's a lot of the experience we're seeing in the United States right now.
Yes. Yes, we do see that. You are absolutely right about that. Now, the digital global age and the imminent space age has brought us, the humans, so many complex challenges on our doorsteps. While it has brought us complex risks and challenges in cyberspace, geospace, and space, it has also brought us the advent of so many new forms of research and communication, and different markets are emerging, new products and services and new models and the way of doing things. So we briefly talked about information communication technologies and internet, but what other drivers you see that matters for collective intelligence to go forward and evolve successfully for everyone?
Yeah, I have to apologize. I'm not keeping up with the current plethora of activities happening, largely because, like I said, it's an evolutionary process. We actually don't know how to look ahead and see what features we need. It's in this kind of natural selective process where some individual tries something and it works, and if it works again, then it survives and does better. It's very difficult to look at what's out there right now and actually say, what will be the future methodology or not. And that's why I think going back to these kind of high-level goals of transparency, defensibility, tailorability are the key features to what we want these risk assessment methods to be. And then from that, we'll get the kind of beneficial outcomes that we desire. Yes. So I can't really comment on specific technology.
I understand that. I appreciate that. Now, perhaps, a closing question for us to ponder is probably how do these new kinds of integrated cyberspace, geospace, space risk intelligence help us understand what it means to be an accountable human in the first place and what our role as humans on the earth is. I think and I hope that this approach to thinking about collective risk intelligence can help us to understand not only what it means to be individual humans, but what it means for us as humans to be part of some broader collective risk intelligence entity. What would you like to tell our global viewers and listeners about what your vision is and what you would like to see everyone across nations working together for the collective good of the humanity, for the benefit of humanity?
I have a huge success story of collective intelligence that most people aren't aware of. My specialty in the last couple of years professionally is in cybersecurity, and that's what my company, Referentia Systems Incorporated, based in Honolulu, does. And I've been a participant in the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, process of creating a new cyber risk assessment methodology, initially to be used for critical infrastructure, but it's now being used more broadly. And NIST was chosen because they're an independent arbiter. They didn't have a bias that many other agencies had. And what they did is over a period of 3 years, they brought together the community and listened. And then would have another meeting and say, well, this is what we heard, and listened again. And what's come out of that is what's called the cyber risk assessment process by NIST. And it's being adopted both within the US and now internationally. The British and Italians have adopted it and actually use it within their kind of governmental systems. So why did it work? Well, again, it was a comprehensive, full stakeholder, no squelching of individual contributions to create this kind of universal process. The resulting methodology gets criticized because it often is not specific enough, but it has to be general enough to apply to everyone. So that's the trade-off that you have to do. But what's, I think, of primary interest in the cybersecurity world, and I think it has analogies to the greater world, is that in cybersecurity we have vulnerabilities that are just similar to what we had in public health 200 years ago. We didn't have a concept of personal hygiene. We didn't have safe water sources and everything. And there needed to be kind of a basic level of public health in order for the community to be safe. And that's the same thing that we need in cybersecurity as well, is that we have to kind of raise the bar and have a cyber public health to create a new basis. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there are these kind of advanced threats that maybe in the bio world are, nation state biological threats. So we have that kind of bimodal risk that we have to address. And I think the same is true in kind of global risk issues too. We have to bring everybody up to some kind of uniform standard where we take care of each other. And then we can focus on the exceptional ones that are really going to challenge us all, like global warming.
Yes, very true, very true. And we do need those systems. It is said that none of us knows everything. I mean, this is a very popular saying that none of us knows everything, but we all know something. So collective intelligence is the foundation of the space age, and even for the ongoing digital globally. So the capacity of NGIOA communities to evolve toward higher order of integration and performance through collaboration and innovation is a need of the time. So thank you, Dr. Johnson, for participating in Risk Roundup today. We appreciate your thoughtful insight on collective intelligence, and our global viewers and listeners would benefit tremendously from the information you provided on collective intelligence, benefits to the society and its future. So even if a single individual or entity can come up with an idea to explore collective intelligence to solve complex challenges facing humanity based on the understanding they received from the discussion we had today, this Risk Roundup dialogue has been of service, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I'm optimistic about the future. I welcome any questions from people. Just send them to norman@santafe.edu. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So today, technology has democratized information and intelligence. Let us all embark on having individual and collective NGIOA goals to elevate the discussion on this critical topic of collective intelligence, to move beyond self-centeredness and sound bites and into the hearts and minds to shape the coming tomorrow in cyberspace, geospace, and space. Let us all be self-aware, conscious, informed, and develop our minds and collectively evolve. Risk Group Cybersecurity, Geosecurity, and Space Security Risk Research Centers are created for this very reason, to identify, evaluate, and manage the risk facing NGIOA in CGS nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia in cyberspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. And it is not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security, so if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the Risk Roundups, to watch the Risk Roundup videos or hear the Risk Roundup podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayashree Pandya, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.